The turkey was already thawed in the fridge when my daughter called. I'd bought a 14-pound bird from the Sobeys on Wellington, the good one with the fresh produce section they'd renovated last spring. I had the cranberry sauce, the stuffing mix, the little bag of pearl onions that my mother used to roast in butter until they turned golden and sweet. I had everything. I had been planning this since October. "Mom," Lily said, and I already knew. I don't know how. Maybe it was the way she said it. Not as a greeting but as an apology. About Thanksgiving, I sat down at the kitchen table. Outside the window, the maple in the backyard had gone completely red. It does that every year right around the first week of October, this sudden blaze of color before everything falls. "Jason's parents are flying in from Calgary," she said. "We didn't know they were coming until last week, I swear, and the apartment is only so big. And it's okay," I said. "Mom, really, Lily, it's okay. It wasn't okay. But I've been saying it's okay for so long that the words come out automatically now, like a reflex I developed sometime in the years after the divorce. A protective instinct, maybe. Don't let them see it land. Don't make your daughter feel worse than she already does." We talked for another few minutes about nothing. The weather, her job at the clinic, whether I'd gotten my flu shot yet. When we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time and looked at the red maple. Then I called my manager at the hospital and asked if anyone needed coverage for the Thanksgiving long weekend. There's always someone who needs coverage. I've been a registered nurse for 22 years. For the last 9, I've worked in the medical imaging department at the regional hospital here in Kingston, Ontario. It's not glamorous work, but it's steady and I'm good at it. And on the days when everything feels like it's caving in, there's something to be said for a job that requires your full attention. You can't sit around feeling sorry for yourself when there's a patient in front of you who needs you to be present. My ex-husband, Malcolm, and I divorced when Lily was 17. She's 29 now. For most of those 12 years she has, consciously or not, managed to stay neutral, which usually means avoiding anything that might make either of us uncomfortable. She splits the holidays down the middle with the precision of someone who has been doing the math her whole life. Easter with me. Christmas with her father. Thanksgiving alternates. This was supposed to be my year. I understood about Jason's parents. I did. They live across the country and they don't visit often, and Lily loves them and they love her. I understood all of it. I just wish someone had called me before I bought a 14-pound turkey. I put the bird back in the freezer and packed a bag and drove the 20 minutes to the hospital. The weekend was quiet, the way holiday weekends often are in imaging. A few urgent referrals, some scheduled follow-ups from patients who couldn't get in during the week. I worked the Saturday and Sunday shifts and was back home by Monday afternoon, the actual Thanksgiving holiday, in time to watch half a football game I didn't care about and eat leftovers from a pasta I'd made Thursday. I was fine. I kept telling myself I was fine. Then, at 11:47 at night, my phone rang. It was Lily. She never calls that late. "Mom," her voice was strange, tight and a little breathless the way it gets when she's trying not to cry. "Something happened." I sat up in bed. "Are you hurt? Is Jason?" "We're fine. We're both fine." She stopped. I heard her take a breath. "It's Dad, Malcolm." I felt something shift in my chest. Not love, not anymore. I want to be honest about that. But 12 years of shared history doesn't just disappear, and Lily is half of him. And when she says it's Dad in that voice, something in me still goes quiet and attentive. "What happened?" "The CRA called the house," she said. "Like 2 investigators. They were at his door this afternoon. The Canada Revenue Agency." I didn't say anything for a moment. "They had a warrant," Lily said. "They took his computer and some files and, Mom, they said it was fraud, like major fraud. I don't even know what that means. I don't know how much. They wouldn't tell me anything. Dad just texted me an hour ago and said not to worry and that it was a misunderstanding, but his wife answered when I called back and she said he couldn't talk right now and I just..." She stopped again. "Lily," I said. "Take a breath." She did. "Okay," I said. "Start from the beginning. Here is what I knew about Malcolm's wife, Renata. I knew she was 41, 8 years younger than him, and that she had moved from Mississauga to Kingston about 3 years ago and met Malcolm through a mutual friend at some networking event downtown. I knew she had a background in finance, or said she did. I knew she drove a white Audi that always seemed freshly washed, even in February, which I'd always thought said something about a person, though I couldn't have told you exactly what. I knew that Lily had been wary of her from the start. Not hostile. Lily is too careful for hostility, but wary. She'd mentioned once, offhandedly, that Renata had a way of changing the subject when anyone asked direct questions about her past. About where she'd worked, what firms, what her credentials actually were. I knew that Malcolm had introduced her to his investment group about 18 months after they married. And I knew, because Lily had mentioned it awkwardly, months ago in that careful way she has, that several of Malcolm's friends had quietly invested money with Renata. That was all I knew. I hadn't thought much about it. It wasn't my life anymore. Dad's investment group, Lily said. You know how he's always been with that. The guys he golfs with, the ones from the Rotary Club. He introduced Renata to them a while back. She was doing private financial planning. She had all these materials, these projections. How much? I asked. That's the thing. I don't know exactly. But from what I can piece together, I think it might be a lot. I think some of his friends put in serious money, and the returns, silence. There were no returns, I said. It wasn't a question. I don't know, Mom, I really don't know. Dad keeps saying it's complicated, that there's been delays, that it's all legitimate and just got flagged for some technical reason. But the CRA doesn't show up at your house with a warrant over a technical reason, do they? No, they don't. I got out of bed and went to the kitchen and put the kettle on, because it was almost midnight and I wasn't going to sleep anyway, and sometimes having something to do with your hands is the only way to keep your thoughts organized. What do you need from me? I asked. I don't know, Lily said. I didn't know who else to call. It's okay, I said. I'm here, and this time I think I meant it. I need to back up. Not because the CRA investigation isn't the point. It is the point, eventually. But because I think you need to understand what the 3 years before that phone call actually looked like. When Malcolm and I divorced, it was civil in the way that divorce can be civil, when two people have spent years being politely unhappy and have finally mutually stopped pretending. There was no screaming. There was no dramatic revelation. There was just the slow and honest acknowledgement that we had grown into two different people who wanted two different things, and that staying together was making both of us smaller. We split the house equity. I kept my RRSP contributions, he kept his. We were fair, or tried to be, which is the best anyone can manage. Malcolm is not a bad man. I want to say that clearly, because nothing that came after changes that fundamental fact. He's stubborn and sometimes thoughtless, and he can be too trusting of people who know how to present themselves well, but he is not a bad man. He coached Lily's soccer team for 6 years. He drove 4 hours in a snowstorm to be at his mother's side when she was in the hospital. He has a generous impulse underneath all the stubbornness that I used to love about him, and that same impulse, I think, is what made him so easy to take advantage of. Renata saw it. She saw exactly what he was. I found out more over the following weeks, in pieces. The CRA investigation, it turned out, had been triggered by a complaint from one of Malcolm's oldest friends, a man named Gerald Fitch, who had invested $60,000 with Renata's so-called wealth management firm 14 months earlier and had seen nothing. No statements, no returns, no answers that made sense. Gerald had hired an accountant to look into it, and the accountant had made a call. Renata's firm, as it turned out, was not registered with the Ontario Securities Commission. The credentials she had presented, the certifications, the performance history, the portfolio documentation, were either fabricated or belonged to a firm she had no current affiliation with. The money that came in from Malcolm's network had gone into accounts that moved quickly and opaquely, and much of it was gone. The total amount when the investigation was complete was just over $400,000. 11 investors. Malcolm had invested 2. His own retirement savings. A significant portion. I learned this from Lily over a series of phone calls that stretched across November and into December. Each call harder than the last, not because of anger. Lily wasn't angry, she was frightened, but because of the particular helplessness of watching someone you love face consequences they could not have seen coming and maybe also could have. He really believed in her, Lily said once. That's the thing I keep coming back to. He wasn't trying to help her scam anyone. He believed she was legitimate. I know, I said. Does that make it better? I thought about that for a moment. It makes it sadder, I said. Renata was arrested in early December. I read about it in the Kingston Whig Standard, a brief article on the local news page. Her name and a description of the charges. Fraud over $5,000. Breach of trust. There would be more charges, the article suggested, pending the completion of the federal investigation. I read the article twice and then put my phone down and went to make dinner. I don't know exactly what I felt. Not satisfaction. That would be too simple and too ugly. something more complicated. The kind of feeling you have when something you privately feared turns out to have been real, and being right gives you no comfort at all. Malcolm had not lost everything, that matters to say. He had other assets, a pension from his years at the engineering firm, the house he'd bought after the divorce. He would not be destitute. But he had lost a great deal, and the particular grief of losing money you planned your retirement around. Money you thought would mean security, freedom, the ability to stop working before your body made the decision for you. That grief is specific and it is real. And I knew Malcolm well enough to know that what hurt most was probably not the money at all. It was that he had trusted her, in front of his friends, and he had been wrong. Lily called me on the 23rd of December. I was at home wrapping a gift for my friend Janet, a cookbook she'd mentioned months ago, the one about Quebecois cuisine, and half watching a British baking show on my laptop. The kind of low-stakes evening I'd actually gotten quite good at constructing. "Mom," she said. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." A pause. "Do you still have room for one more at Christmas, or is it too last minute?" I stopped what I was doing. "It's just, Jason's parents went back to Calgary on the 20th, and with everything going on with Dad, I keep thinking about you being alone over there and me being, I don't know. I think I want to be home." "Home." She said home. I had not called my place home in the conversation since she moved out, I realized. Neither had she. "I have a frozen turkey," I said. She laughed, a little watery. "What, from Thanksgiving? I never cooked it. It's been sitting in my freezer for 2 months. It's 14 pounds and it's probably fine." She laughed again, louder this time. "Come home," I said. "Bring Jason. The turkey will be ready by the time you get here." We had Christmas dinner on the 24th because that's when Lily and Jason could get away. Jason's family does their celebration on the 25th, and she didn't want him to miss it. I didn't mind. I'd done Ukrainian Christmas in January before. I'd done Easter in May. I've learned that the actual calendar date matters much less than the presence of the people you love. I thawed the turkey. I made the stuffing with the dried cranberries and the sourdough bread my mother used to use. I roasted the pearl onions in butter until they were golden and soft. I found a bottle of Ontario's Riesling at the back of the pantry that turned out to be excellent. Lily sat at the kitchen table while I cooked and we talked, really talked, in the way we hadn't in a while. About her work at the clinic, the patients she worried about, the colleagues she was having trouble with, about Jason and how things were going and how they were thinking, carefully, cautiously, about the future, about her father and how frightened she'd been, and how the fright had settled now into something more like sadness. "I felt so stupid," she said, "for not seeing it sooner. About Renata, I mean. I had a weird feeling about her from the beginning and I never said anything." "You couldn't have known what she was doing," I said. "I know, but still." I set down the basting brush and looked at her. "You called me," I said, "when you needed someone. That's not nothing." She looked at her wine glass. "I should have called you more this year." I didn't push it. Some things don't need to be said twice. After dinner, after the dishes, after Jason had fallen asleep on the sofa with one of Malcolm's old paperback thrillers open on his chest, Lily and I sat at the kitchen table with tea and the last of the shortbread I'd made the week before. "What happens to Dad now?" she asked. "He's cooperating with the investigation," I said. "That helps. He wasn't the one running the scheme, he was a victim of it. The investigators know that, but some of his friends lost money because of his referral." "Yes." I didn't soften it. "That's going to be hard to navigate. With the friendships, I mean. Maybe some of those relationships don't survive it." Lily was quiet for a moment. "Gerald apparently isn't speaking to him. Gerald lost $60,000. Yeah, outside, it was snowing. Not the heavy wet snow of November but the real Christmas kind, dry and light and almost theatrical in how perfectly timed it was. The maple in the backyard had been bare for 2 months, just branches, and now it was white." "Do you think she knew what she was doing?" Lily asked. "Renata." "From the beginning." I wrapped my hands around my mug. "Probably from before the beginning," I said. "What does that mean?" "It means I think she found him deliberately. Someone like your father, generous, connected, trusted in his community. Someone with a network of friends who'd defer to his judgment about money. That's not an accident. That's a target." Lily stared at the table. "I'm not saying that to be cruel about him," I said quickly. "He's a good man who got chosen specifically because of the things that make him good. That's what these people do." "How do you know so much about it?" I smiled a little. I've spent 22 years watching people in hospitals. You learn to recognize when someone is performing, rather than being. It's a different energy. Lily looked at me. Did you ever feel that from Renata? When you met her? I had met Renata exactly once, at Lily's engagement party 2 years before. She had been charming and well-dressed and had asked me several careful questions about my work at the hospital that felt like questions of someone who had done research, rather than someone who was genuinely curious. Afterwards, in the car on the way home, I'd thought, she's very good. Yes, I said. Why didn't you say anything? Because it wasn't my place, I said. Malcolm made his choices. I made mine. I don't get to walk back into his life and tell him who to trust. Lily was quiet for a moment. That must have been hard. I thought about it honestly, a little. But mostly I just tried to mind my own business and trust that if anything was genuinely wrong, it would come out. And it did. And it did, I said. Renata's case was still moving through the courts as of the spring. These things take time, the lawyers, the documentation, the forensic accounting. I wasn't following it closely. That wasn't my job. But I kept a passing eye on the Whig Standard and the occasional update that came through Lily. Malcolm had retained a civil lawyer about potential recovery of assets, though from what I understood the prognosis for that was uncertain. Some of the money was likely gone for good. He was adjusting his retirement timeline, looking at options, doing what people do when a plan they trusted fails and they have to build a new one from scratch. Gerald Fitch was, as of March, still not speaking to him. Some things take longer to repair than a legal case. What I think about, when I think about that whole year, is not the investigation or the arrest, or even the phone call at midnight that started everything. What I think about is the moment Lily said home. In all the years since the divorce, I had quietly, unconsciously reclassified myself. From the center of things to a stop on the circuit. One of the places Lily moves between, along with her father's house and her own apartment, and Jason's parents in Calgary. I had done it without realizing it. The way you adapt to things that hurt by simply deciding they're permanent. But she said home. And she meant it. I think the hardest thing about being the parent who shows up, year after year, who says it's okay even when it isn't, who fills in the holiday shifts at the hospital and eats pasta alone on a Monday night. The hardest thing isn't the loneliness, actually. The loneliness you can manage. You find a shape for it, you fill your freezer with 14-pound turkeys, and you make shortbread and you learn to be quite content in your own company. The hardest thing is the not knowing whether any of it is seen. It's seen, I think, eventually, in the ways that count. Lily called me first. Not because I had engineered any of it, not because I had inserted myself, or made anyone feel guilty, or played any of the long games that people sometimes play in fractured families. She called me because when things got frightening and unclear and bigger than she knew how to hold, I was the person she thought of. That's not nothing. That's actually everything. The turkey was dry, in the end. 2 months in a home freezer will do that, even if you baste it twice and tent it with foil. Lily ate 2 full plates anyway and declared it perfect, which is the kind of generous and necessary lie that holds families together, and I told her so, and she laughed so hard she had to set down her fork. Jason woke up from the sofa around 10 o'clock and wandered into the kitchen, looking confused and slightly guilty about the paperback, and I made him a plate and he sat with us at the table, and we talked until almost midnight. Outside, the snow kept falling on the bare maple. I didn't take a picture of it. I wish I had, but I remember exactly what it looked like, and I think that's enough.